to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John's reports for the 8th of March. And while we had an exciting one for the 7th there, you can see that we started with all of the bullish indications of the orange dip. We were just about to have that crossover of green. In fact, the day started with that, but didn't take long before rejection. And when you get these kinds of meetings and rejections, they're significant. And I talked about this with the shakeout rising towards positive, particularly on the NQ. A move back to the negative side would be ugly, and it would push us to that 4,008. And in fact, it pushed us to the 4,008 and kept going because that just accelerated the selling. And that's exactly how that works. And you can see that we'd already had red rising with the magenta MBI, and this time white has taken over. Now magenta's still rising, so there was still plenty of buying within that setup, but pivot below the 25 is going to be rough for bulls to be able to hold on to, and that's going to literally put the 38% level back at 39.49 in range, and potentially even more. From an NQ standpoint, it was a little bit stronger. They were able to maintain that 61% level, but again, it hit its resistance at this key level where the S&P had already passed it. So again, the Nasdaq is leading this because again, it hit that resistance, wasn't able to break through it, and just retreated back. And with MBI white leading on that, that differential is significant. Though it does have DOC green still leading, but that rise of orange is always problematic in this case, and it went to a -4 from a D omega standpoint uh, for the green. You're still at -5 for the cyan. So it just means the shorts weren't able to overcome it. Just the small short activity was enough to drive selling. And, people blame it on Powell and his comments, blah, 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 blah. But it, how long have we been talking? How many weeks have we been talking that the market was misguided in its view that the Fed was going to back down on rate increases? And they kept believing it. Again, you have to go with what is. But as soon as the realization hit, uh, and he made it pretty clear, uh, yeah, it was going to be suffering. And, Treasury's still way too high for what we're talking about. There's been a huge flock of retail into treasuries and that, but rates are going to continue to rise. So the value of those decreases as that happens. But at least from their viewpoint, you have safety in principle, but actually the principle's being eroded by the inflation anyway. So you're not keeping pace with anything. And that left for a pretty good sized retreat of oil, white MBI leading that one pretty much all the way even into the increase. So we knew that it was going to be problematic. But again, it's about currency devaluation and the strength of the dollar off that comments really propelled the dollar and made commodities suffer because obviously they become relatively cheaper with the stronger currency. And that we already knew that gold was subject to a little bit of that pullback in there. We had talked about it from this shakeout situation. When it gets this low, usually you have a run up, and then it's the second one that leads to a more significant increase. And the euro, literally the eurozone, there was so much optimism, in this whole run up here that the eurozone was outperforming the West and that their inflation wasn't bad, but it was all just baloney. The reality is things are catastrophic from a eurozone standpoint, not just mentioned from the debt, but also from the economic revival construct. It's just not happening. And sure enough, the realization of that just caused people to want to flee into um, dollar assets, and relative to the dollar, euro plummeting was over almost a penny and a half. That's a huge move, and these have been large moves in currencies, which not typically normal in stable situations. And that volatility lets you know that it's not stable. Bitcoin suffering once it was below that 22.8 level, just under the 23, suffering from that and retracing further. And we knew that was going to happen with the MBI lead and the magenta pivot below 25. So none of that's a surprise to any of us. And same thing with ETH. So it was all pretty consistent. We had closed out the long that took place from that GAM, SPI, MBI, that was 100 points from there. We went from 62 and a quarter to 4,063 and a quarter. So 101 points on the upside. It took the short from there. I have to find out why it wanted that one along with, yes, the magenta was leading, but you had MBI white over that. So I'm going to talk to my program about that because I don't like that setup from a long standpoint. Some people say, of course, this is what we were talking about, Powell and him leading the selling with his comments. Well, if you just look at what was taking place in futures, either someone knew or the sell was already underway, because this is well before any of those remarks. And the same thing with the beginning fall, all happened well before the comments started. And any little optimism was quickly beaten down. And that just spurred more of the programs to begin to sell. And you can see that all the way through the end of the day, there was a brief short cover rally right at the end of the day. Right here, didn't last too long and faded off pretty quickly. That was kind of clean from the 50K, suggested that the little pop wasn't going to have any sustained length. And you can see that we're looking to move back towards the zero at the 82 range from a 5K standpoint. So we'll look for that. But exciting day. I think that all went beautiful and excellent from a paint bar standpoint. So very happy with that. As always, though, trade well. Look for me on the Skype chat. Have a good one.